Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And Mark Carney up in Canada, looking like George Costanza from Seinfeld with the corner office. Not doing much, but trying to look busy as the country collapses.
Well, he's finally coming out and basically admitting it at this point.
Well, he's halfway admitting it because the numbers are coming out. He's no longer able to deny what's going on in Canada. And I think from here on in, the numbers aren't going to get any better. They manipulated them to the maximum amount over the last decade. And now the crows are coming home to roost here.
And we have been talking about this for quite a while now on this show, but I mean, it was just a matter of time until it became this obvious.
Well, and also, I think Donald Trump may use the destruction of Canada if they don't come to some kind of deal with the United States as a campaigning opportunity, saying, you don't want what happened to Canada to happen to the United States. If Joe Biden was in here, the United States would look like Canada. So I think it's a real opportunity for Trump, even if he doesn't come to some tariff deal with Canada. Okay, let's get right into the first story, and this is Mark Carney.
So he did give a speech today, and his table salt says, Mark Carney delivers grim speech to Canada. What's going on is an economic rupture, announces many changes to EI, which is employment on insurance, Buy Canada provision to business loans, and scraps the EV or electric vehicle mandate, as there's a massive deficit incoming.
And it's a pretty long clip, so we're just going to listen to the beginning, but the beginning is the important part because he is starting to admit what's happening. To this point, people just can't believe the things he's been saying. He's finally admitted Canada's blown a gasket here.
Yeah, where is it?
What's going on is not a transition. It's a rupture. And its effect will be profound.
Pause it. Go over a little bit so we can see her face because she does not look happy and she's been one of the biggest liars within this administration.
That is Melanie Joly, the finance minister?
Used to be the finance minister. They've shuffled her around now, I believe.
Workers displaced from their jobs. Supply chains that have existed for decades disrupted. Companies forced to change where they find their materials and their products. And all of this is causing an extreme uncertainty that's holding back massive amounts of investment and, as a consequence, slowing economic growth. Just this morning, we see the impact in today's employment report in Canada, with unemployment rising across regions and sectors.
Pause it. And he's talking about 100,000 jobs lost within Canada within 2 months, hundreds of billions of dollars leaving Canada, going to the United States, and it doesn't look like it's coming back. It's finally starting to sink in what the United States meant to Canada. And Canada has been abusing the United States for decades with their own tariffs. And now that the United States wants to do the same thing to Canada, Canada doesn't know what to do. Well, they do know what to do. They just elected the wrong guy to do it.
This makes decisive action crucial. To be clear, we're in a position right now where Canada currently has the best trading deal with the United States of any of their trading partners. 85% of our trade with the U.S. is now tariff-free.
Pause it.
We have
It's not that he got that deal for him. That deal was in place before he got there. It's up for renegotiation, and Canada's economy is already in the dumps, even though they do have the best trading deal. He is right, but he's not responsible for that. And America has woken up to the abuse Canada has been doing to them for more than a decade now. So when that trade deal is up for renegotiation, the last time it was up for renegotiation, Trump had offered Mexico to do a bilateral partnership. It was Mexico that demanded Canada be in the trade agreement. It's going to be funny if Canada's cut out this time. Hey, let's go back to the clip if we can.
Sorry, I was trying to fix my contact.
have the lowest tariff rate of any country in the world. But we also know that given all those changes, given the rupture, we can't rely on our most important trading partner as we once did. Le libre-échange depuis longtemps.
Free trade has been a pillar of the Canadian economy for a long time. For decades, our increasing participation in the American market was one of the strengths, the economic strengths Canada had. Trade represents two-thirds of Canada's GDP. Sectors like the automobile sector, the steel sector, and the aluminum sector send more than 90% of their production to the U.S. And in many cases, the supply chains are interdependent. These sectors are essential to our economy because of the size of their production and the jobs they create and the communities they support. What in the past was one of Canada's strengths has today become a vulnerability.
And pause it. It's not a vulnerability. If he wouldn't have said elbows up, let's go to war with the United States, I'm the man. He campaigned off of Donald Trump's back, and he played off of the fear of Canadians and Trump derangement syndrome that is just deep, deep, deep within most of Canada, which is absolutely ridiculous. Canada and America have always had a good partnership. It's not Donald Trump trying to break this thing.
Relationship with the United States, so essential for so many industries, was once one of our greatest strengths, and in many cases, in certain sectors, has become a vulnerability. This disruption calls for a bold new approach. And given, as Minister Joly said, given that we can't control what other nations do, Canada's government is focused on what we can control. And that means building our strength at home, building Canada strong.
She's the first one clapping.
They have no plan. Their whole plan was, we're going to play hardball with the Americans. And they said they're going to retrain Canadians and they're going to invest in Canada. There's nothing to invest in because all the private business is leaving. This looks like a planned demolition and the hard march towards socialism, where the government is going to start giving bailouts for percentages of companies.
That means giving our workers and our companies the tools they need, retraining our workers, transforming our strategic sectors, creating entirely new industries, and being our own best customer by buying Canadian.
And it's funny because like a few weeks ago, he was talking about trade and partnership with Europe, but now that talking point has also gone away.
Well, no,
because Europe is not doing that well.
Yeah, but it hasn't gone away because Melanie Joly back there was talking about it 2 days ago. We're going to go away from America and towards Europe and towards Asia, making these veiled threats towards America. This is not going to work out for them if they keep up this plan.
Now they're also trying to say they're going to be insular and building Canada strong, and that's completely new because they did it.
They've been saying that they want interprovincial trade. They want to take down the tariffs between provinces. That's what they've been saying, but he can't do it because he doesn't have a majority government. And after these numbers are coming out, it's going to be very hard for him to win an election, especially with Pierre Poilievre back. Mm-hmm. And that's the man Canadians really need right now.
So today, to fortify our economic strength, my colleagues and I are announcing a series of ambitious new measures.
That's pretty good for this. And I just wanted to kind of start that off with a series of Canadian stories before we go into international news here.
Because we did live in Vancouver, Canada for a long time. Now we live in Mexico, and I'm guessing we're both kind of glad that we're not over there as the collapse actually starts showing itself in a more obvious way. I mean, it was very obvious, at least for us, but for a lot of people, I'm guessing this is coming almost as a surprise, the collapse that is happening in Canada.
Yeah, most people vote on their emotions and what feels good, not what the country actually needs. And that's why for the past decade, Canada has been going downhill at a very fast rate. Now, the current tariff deals that Canada is trying to make with the United States, it's not going well. They're using an attack strategy against the United States. They finally abandoned that strategy, and now they're trying to play friends, but I don't think America's taken too well to it. On the other hand, Claudia Sheinbaum, who I might not be a big fan of, but I do have to commend her. She's done everything she can to get the best trade deal and cooperate with the Americans thus far. So in the end, it's going to be interesting to see what the Mexican trade deal is compared to the Canadian, because they had two different strategies. The Canadians even tried to work in some kind of bilateral trade between Mexico and Canada and cut out the Americans, and Mexico said, no, no, no.
Because they knew what was more convenient. And again, yeah, we do not love the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, not even by a little bit, but the way that it has been managed, at least in the back end, because they come out here in Mexican media and when she does her press conferences and says, oh, we're not letting the US, domineer us or tell us what to do. But I mean, they are.
They are behind the scenes, and the Trump administration talks about it behind closed doors and alternative media. These statements come out and you can see what's really going on.
And it is funny that Mark Carney has found himself with a strange bedfellow, one that was vilified also in Canada for the longest time, because apparently, this is from RCI New, Canadian News, Project 2025 Mastermind invited to Carney's cabinet meeting, no longer speaking.
Well, he's got a lot of strange bedfellows. There's been a lot of connections with this carbon agenda that Mark Carney kind of manipulated and was supposed to be the new economic strategy for the global West. They're now abandoning that, but Elon Musk was highly connected to that, surprisingly. But those connections were made 5 to 10 years ago. So,
and I think maybe they got cold feet, and because this news came out before it actually happened. But Prime Minister's office says Heritage Foundation president knows the Trump administration's playbook, a prominent conservative figure in American politics, and the mastermind behind Project 2025, the infamous policy blueprint that proposed a drastic overhaul of the U.S. government, was invited to speak to Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet behind closed doors Thursday, but is no longer making the trip north. So this news came out before he actually went over, but the fact that he was just going over, period, I think raised a lot of red flags and ended up making him maybe uninvited.
oh, he's not invited anymore?
No, he's no longer making the trip.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not going to work out well for the Trump administration. This guy is close to the Trump administration, and they do need to start networking outside of their regular tariff negotiations. They need to start using different Canadian figures that are close to these American figures and figure out how to get this thing done.
And we have spoken about how maybe Mark Carney and President Trump are closer, or maybe working more in cahoots than most people anticipate or know. And this might be an inclination, even if he didn't go all the way up to Canada, that there was that kind of conversation going on in the behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, I think Carney was trying to play hardball, and now they're like, oh shit, the economy is completely collapsing, and it's not a controlled collapse. It's not under their terms, which they wanted in order to bring in digital currency and digital ID. It's going to look really, really bad if the Canadian economy implodes as the American economy is doing well and expanding. It's going to be hard to explain to the American people, especially if Donald Trump gets rid of the IRS and all taxes in the United States for the working class. And Canadians can pay up to 60 to 70% taxes. What's going to happen if the United States economy is just doing fantastic and then there's no more taxes? That's what Trump's talking about. He wants to bring these tariffs in order to get rid of taxing the working class, just like how the United States was founded on. Before World War I, there was no taxes on U.S. citizens. And Trump says he wants to go back to that. And the way to do that is through a tariff.
But also with... That's a strange noise. But also with... unemployment kind of not going super up in the States, but at least not, tanking. In Canada,
it's a really low rate right now within the United States. So,
but in Canada, according to Global News, warning lights are flashing, economist says, as unemployment hits 7.1%.
Yeah, the reason the unemployment in the United States is so low is because they're getting rid of all the migrants. So now even regular places that would pay minimum wage are paying way above minimum wage just to get workers in there because they're only having access to American citizens right now. Now, let's read a little bit about this. And this is over 100,000 jobs lost in just 2 months.
So unemployment...
Imagine what's going to happen in 12.
Unemployment was up for the second straight month in Canada and has reached the highest level since 2016 outside of the bad times years, according to new data. Well, here's a hit we've all been anticipating. The impact of tariffs and economic disruption is starting to show, and the numbers are worrying, says economist, I can't read that name, at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And they will continue to blame the tariffs and, oh, it's not our fault, we didn't do anything wrong, even though most of the even Canadian people know what has been done wrong and why the numbers are where they are.
Every other country got a trade deal in order to stop the bleeding, that it gives them some security and it knows what's coming next, so then businesses can make plans. But Canada's inability to get a tariff deal is just, as capital absolutely fleeing Canada, as manufacturing fleeing Canada. Most manufacturing companies that are in Canada are now moving to the United States because they want to avoid tariffs, and they're not going to come back because this is a multi-billion-dollar shift for a lot of these companies. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, we're going to get into that story later. I believe he's investing between $600 and $800 billion before 2028, which that's almost $1 trillion. That's for one company.
Says Canada's August labor force release makes it clear and the warning lights are flashing. Statistics Canada reported on Friday today that in August, the national unemployment rate climbed to 7.1% from 6.9% in July. August's reading was also the highest unemployment rate in Canada since May 2016, and not except for the bad times. August reading was also the highest unemployment rate. Oh, I read that part. The agency reported that Canada's job market shed 666,000 positions in August, which was led by losses in part-time work. A Reuters poll of economists heading into the release expected a gain of 10,000 jobs, and unemployment rate would rise to 7% for the month.
Yeah, and a lot of this, they're still trying to manipulate the numbers by having the government expand in their workforce. So that being said, the government's going to start running out of money here, and they're not going to be able to do unlimited hiring in order to try to cover up job numbers and other things.
And then it continues. A 66,000 unemployment decline in Canada in August was after a 41,000 contraction in July, and adds to evidence that the trade war, again, it's taking its toll on Canadian labor markets, says senior economist Claire Fan, another woman.
And this is only the beginning. Like, this is the first 2 months. This is going to be nothing. When you look at this 12-month stretch, this is really only the tip of the iceberg. Canada should be in a panic right now. There's a reason we left. It's because we are very clued in politically. We do shows like this every day, so we kind of knew this was coming. We actually planned for 4 years, saved for 4 years. I worked 4 or 5 jobs, over 100 hours a week in order to save up to get out of that country. Mm-hmm. And we were able to do it in 4 years because we could see it coming half a decade ago.
The worsening trend in the summer also mirrors conditions south of the border. Job growth in the U.S. largely ground to a halt since May, and the unemployment rate has also edged higher. And again, Global News is a traditional media source, so take it with a grain of salt. And of course, they will continue to try to make Canada seem better than it is and the U.S. worse off than it is. But this is also because who subsidizes them? The Canadian government itself. But now they can't even make up most of the things that they usually do, or like put fluff around the numbers, because the numbers are so obvious and so dire now, and it'll continue to trend down.
Yeah, and I mean, America also has the tariffs coming in. They have billions upon billions, if not trillions of dollars rolling in because of these tariffs. So yeah, their economy is doing the right thing. They're getting back to a manufacturing base. Huge $1 trillion investments are coming in from tech companies. You name it, it's coming back from Taiwan, from China, and other places in the world. All these Canadian businesses are moving to the United States.
It's not only with, for example, jobs, but also other plans that had been touted for the longest time by the Canadian government, not just Trudeau, but also Carney, at least when he started.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, because when I read this, I thought it was a complete axe on these EVs. What it ends up being is just for a year. Carney has this thing he likes to do, like he's getting rid of something, but he doesn't. So the carbon tax, which was in full effect, he brought down to 0. He didn't get rid of it. He just says it's at 0 for now. It's the same thing with these EVs. He's given a 1-year relief for the manufacturers to not have to pay a penalty for not hitting EV targets.
So according to the CBC, Canada delaying plan to force automakers to hit EV sales targets. Move comes as industry has struggled under the U.S. tariffs. Again, whose fault is it really?
They don't have the chargers in Canada. They don't have the infrastructure. They invested billions of dollars into.
They don't even have the climate to properly manage.
They invested $1 billion into a battery manufacturing plant that just went completely belly up. So.
So Prime Minister Mark Carney is delaying a plan to force automakers to hit minimum sale levels of electric vehicles. The move is a part of a series of measures the government announced on Friday to help the sectors most affected by President Donald Trump's tariffs. Of course, let's always blame somebody else. Let's not blame our own strategizing as a government. The EV mandate will be paused as the government conducts a 60-day review of the policy and will be waived for 2026 models. Sources say that the review will look at the entire mandate and next steps. We have an auto sector which, because of the massive change in policy in the US, is under extreme pressure. We recognize that, Carney said at the news conference. They've got enough on their plate right now, so we're taking that off. The government is using a review as part of a broader look at all government's climate measures, he added, because they know they can't work.
Well, and he is doubling down on everything else climate, and that's the scary thing. He's not getting any of these natural resource infrastructure projects going, which Canada has an absolute abundance of: lumber, oil, mining, you name it. Canada has it. They're refusing to move ahead. He needs to start approving these projects now. They take 5 to 10 years to get off of the ground. That being said, also, it's going to be very interesting that in the States, one of the courts has now said these tariffs are illegal, so the United States government may have to give that money back. Trump's going to bring it to the Supreme Court, and he thinks he's going to win there. Hopefully he does, but even if he doesn't, and the tariffs remain or become illegal, Canada's still in a very bad spot, because what happens to Canada now is he's been touting how we have the best tariff deal of any country in the world because of the North America Free Trade Agreement. If Trump isn't able to implement these tariffs, he's going to renegotiate that North America Free Trade Agreement, which is coming up in 2026, and he's going to be very hard on that agreement because of what they did during the tariff era.
But also, if you want to know how crazy the targets were and how insane Justin Trudeau's and the Liberals' plans were, it says the pause represents another shift away from Carney's predecessor's climate agenda, which Carney himself helped, engineer and build. The former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau brought in the Electric Vehicle Availability Standard, otherwise known as the Zero Emission Vehicle Mandate. It establishes a series of escalating light-duty vehicle sales targets for auto manufacturers and importers, starting at 20% in 2026 and reaching 100% in 2035.
Okay, stop right there. And this is where there was a connection between go back to that, between Carney and Musk. That 20% that they had to hit, no Canadian manufacturer or no Canadian seller was hitting that target. They were hitting between 5 and 8%. That means they were 12% off. For every car they missed the quota by, which was going to be thousands of cars, they had to pay $20,000 to a company like Tesla. And Tesla was specifically mentioned there. Brookfield Management is highly invested in Tesla and other Elon Musk companies. That being said, they were making sure money was going to flow into Tesla. It was a very interesting thing that kind of came out.
And automakers, other ones, have been lobbying the Liberal government to scrap the mandate, arguing it will cripple their companies and put thousands of jobs at risk. The mandate has also come under political pressure, notably from the Conservatives, who, in a fundraising email, accused the radical Liberals of planning to make gas-powered vehicles illegal and force people to buy expensive EVs. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre called the decision a clumsy retreat. And, I mean, it is.
And part of the reason you're seeing David Eby, which is the Premier of British Columbia, come out and say, we need to stop immigration, and now he's coming out with this EV mandate. The word is around Christmas time, he wanted to call a snap election. So if he can change his policies temporarily, well, he has a high approval rating, call that a snap election, and then win a majority government, he can really go head on into these climate activist policies that he wants to bring in.
Because he did the same thing with, what was it? The targets. What were they called?
The carbon taxes.
The carbon tax. He said that they're going down to zero. Never said they were removing them, but did say, oh, for this year, it's going to be zero. Don't worry about it. But they never fully retract on what the actual plan is. So there's always this worry that it'll come back. And you were speaking about David Eby, who is British Columbia's premier. And he did apparently start siding with the Conservatives, who have been banging on this drum for who knows how long. From Global News, temporary foreign worker program should be reformed significantly or canceled, says Eby, who was one of the most progressive and more pro-immigration, all the crazy liberal policies, who's now apparently, retreating pretty quickly and saying, no, it's not a good idea. He said British Columbia's Premier David Eby is calling on the federal
And
government.
this is one of the most woke, liberal, progressive prime ministers within Canada for him to come out with a statement saying immigration needs to stop and agreeing with the Conservatives. This is huge. He knows his electoral future rides on this issue.
He's calling on the federal government to make major changes to temporary foreign worker program or to scrap it outright. We also spoke about this program, Wednesday, I believe. Eby made the comments Thursday at his first public appearance after a month of break over the summer. They keep taking breaks in this government also.
Yeah, let's go down and see what he said.
He said the temporary foreign worker program is not working. It should be canceled or significantly reformed. Here in British Columbia, we see an unacceptably high level of unemployment among young people, which has been linked to both the international student visa program as well as the temporary foreign worker program. Eby also cited allegations of fraudulent sale of labor market impact assessments, or LMIAs, documents that show a Canadian worker isn't available for the job they're offering when hiring a foreign worker.
Yeah, so what's happening here, a lot of these businesses are applying to be able to hire foreign workers at high wages, like $36 an hour, hiring the worker, paying them under the wage, and then kind of getting kickbacks from the worker themselves for allowing them into the country and allowing them to work to get permanent residency status.
And usually with the...
And for David Eby to say that, the Conservative Party hasn't even brought that up at this point. So this is huge. He's really gone, if not as far as Poilievre, maybe even farther by calling out this manipulation of the government program.
And usually with the labor market impact assessment, or LMIA, what the employer would do is fill out and say, oh, I've made a market search for putting up this employment job offer for any Canadians that want to take it. I haven't found anyone. Okay, now I need a foreign worker. The problem is it has been completely manipulated for the past 10 years or more. And it is not true when they usually say they've done the research and try to find someone that's Canadian. They don't, because in the end, it does benefit them more to have a temporary foreign worker.
And they're not when they do advertise the job, they're not offering at the rate that they're offering at the foreign workers program, because they're going to confiscate a lot of that wage back. There was a fast food burrito joint in Canada. I was specifically watching this on another podcast. $36 an hour for a fast food worker, but they only wanted it from a foreign worker. They were going to confiscate that wage back.
And something I don't think that has come up either by Poilievre or through Eby either is what you were saying the other day as well, that the government actually subsidizes and gives money to companies to hire temporary foreign workers. So it's like a round laundry system.
So they give a 30% kickback for companies that hire directly to foreign workers. And if you say you're going to pay $36 an hour, well, that 30% actually covers their whole wage, especially if you confiscate anything over the minimum.
So he said any reform of the program must ensure that farmers and other sectors that legitimately need temporary labor are accommodated. Eby said British Columbia is willing to convene provinces that are interested in this issue to have a serious grown-up conversation about immigration in Canada, the impact it is having on critical infrastructure, he said.
The thing is with Eby, he's saying he knows his political future kind of rides on this issue, but he's completely blocking any infrastructure projects that need to go through BC, which are a ton of them, because anything from Calgary or Edmonton, where all the oil's out, if they want to get to the ocean to put that thing on tankers, they have to go through BC. And Eby's not only blocking it through legislation or blocking it himself as the premier, but he's also giving tens of thousands of acres away to First Nations group, which adds another hurdle if you want to build a pipeline or anything else through BC.
In early Thursday, Statistics Canada published data showing an alarming rise in youth unemployment, with overall youth unemployment rising from 10% in 2022 to 14% mid-2025. Nearly 1 in 5 Canadian teens want to work but cannot find any jobs, the report noted. The NDP's premier's comments have made him an unlikely ally with federal Conservative opposition leader Pierre Poilievre on the issue. And on Wednesday, he said something similar. We spoke about it as well. And in Canada, you do see something even more marked, I would say, than what happens in the US, where yes, Canadian teenagers cannot find jobs because those positions that were usually filled by them during the summer and then on the lighter months, well, they could survive without as many employees, are now covered year-round by temporary foreign workers and or international students that actually come to work because they do get the ability to work I think it's 36 hours a week.
Well, and those jobs are crucially important. Not that they're going to make a career out of these jobs, but it shows some level of job experience, public interaction, stuff like this, which you really need those basic skills before you go into your career, because they build kind of a front-facing foundation if you're talking to any kind of public customers or stuff like this.
And there's also been a lot of lobbying to continue and to keep the temporary foreign workers program, because it is the businesses that benefit from having the kickbacks, from having the cheaper labor.
Well, Mark Carney is saying that he everybody's asked him to keep it, and he's going to keep it, and that's the line he's keeping for now. But I think if he realizes he can win a snap election and get a majority government, I think he'll slightly change that policy in order to try to get that majority government.
And here's how other members of the Conservative Party work and have worked, because BC Conservative opposition leader John Rustad, however, warned that scrapping the temporary foreign worker program would crush the province's tourism and agriculture industries, which again is probably because he's been lobbied at.
Well, and agricultural industries, you can understand maybe bringing foreign workers for that, but anything else, I'm completely against.
And that is how the program started in Canada in the 80s, I believe, or 90s. The province, he said, should take the matter into its own hands. The immigration system was broken by Ottawa, and we need a made in BC approach so we can take over immigration.
Okay, and let's go into the next story here.
Canadian Federation of Independent Business is mad at David Eby now.
And we're going to go into the Mexico story about Canada here, if you have it.
I do. And I mean, let's just finish off the northern hemisphere of the American continent. Canada imported more vehicles from Mexico than the US in June.
Yeah, and this was directly because of the tariffs. Canada's trying to play tough. They try to cut a deal directly with Mexico and cut out the U.S. Mexico said no, which is great because they still got this fantastic deal anyway. So why not use everybody as a trading partner here? But Mexico has prioritized the U.S. as their primary trading partner, which they want, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these cars that are being manufactured in Mexico are still being manufactured, but they were expected to get into the United States. The United States has put an extremely high tariff. So now they're being shipped to South America, Central America, and obviously now Canada.
Well, let me read it. But we can move on to talk about Trudeau's trees.
Yeah, and this one was pretty interesting.
I'm also not going to let me read
I think this has a lot to do with forest fires in Canada. We'll read it, and then I'll kind of get into my spin on it.
So from Juno News, feds are nearly 89% short of Trudeau's 2 billion trees pledge. The Liberal government has only planted just over 10% of the 2 billion trees former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised, reaching this figure at the halfway point of its pledge.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually seen a lot of manipulation of these tree planting companies and these green companies. An NFL player actually started a tree planting company and was getting paid on the side so they can avoid the salary cap. And then I started looking more into these tree planting companies, and it seems to be one of these big money laundering operations that people thought nobody was going to look into, but now they do seem to be looking into it. That being said, let's go back to the issue of Canada. Canada needs to start clear cutting forest break lines to prevent forest fires. They have refused to do that. That would pay them money for the lumber they cut down and also protect the forest from forest fires. But they're refusing to do mass logging like this. They're refusing to do forest cleanup. If they do this clear cutting, they can then come in and plant these trees. But they're not doing the clear cutting. And then on top of that, they're not planting these new trees.
Says the Liberal government has only planted just over 10% of the 2 billion trees former Prime Minister promised, reaching this figure at the halfway point.
Yeah, a lot of this money is going into politicians' pockets. That's what's happening.
A press release issued last Friday by Natural Resources Canada confirmed that over 228 million trees have been planted so far, but it's not near enough or near the target that Trudeau had set.
No, and it's supposed to be, the reason they're setting these certain targets is they're supposed to cut a certain amount of lumber down every year, and this is supposed to prevent forest fires. But this whole system's messed up because they want forest fires. They want to be able to point at the statistics. They want to say climate change is going crazy. You need more government. You need more rules. We have to tax you more. Carbon tax, carbon tax, carbon tax.
So yes, we are seeing now the acceleration of the decline of Canada under not only Mark Carney, but also, I mean, the years that Trudeau was there and managed to completely ruin the country. Because just today today we were talking about how when I first arrived in Canada, in Vancouver, the Conservatives had power and it wasn't the greatest, but it did seem like what they promised on the brochures, and year after year, we did see a sharp decline in every single issue
Well,
that you
the
can
Canadian
think of.
dollar used to be stronger than the American dollar. They were on par for wages and everything else when the Liberals took over. Liberals have been in almost a decade now, and it's been a decline ever since they've gotten in.
And if you see the chart, I didn't grab it for today, but if also for housing, if you see the chart in the real estate market for the US and their wages and how the cost of housing versus wages, those two lines kind of went up kind of similarly, not specifically. Housing obviously went way higher up, but in Canada, you can just see the wages have stagnated ever since almost
Well, it's not the problem.
2011, and the housing has just spiraled out of control.
Yeah, and what she's trying to say here is they've manipulated the housing market to an extreme amount. Politicians have invested in this, and they do not want property values going down. They had mass foreign investment in Canadian property. Canadian property is worth 10 times more than it should be, and they don't want it to go down. And the fact that they don't want it to go down, nobody can afford to buy a house. You will own nothing and be happy is the slogan of Canada, and where Canada is quickly headed.
And the problem, because they haven't allowed it to go down or to go to its natural place, once it crashes, it is going to affect very negatively both homeowners and renter, everybody. It's
And
going to affect everybody.
Banks are going to start collapsing because people are just going to stop paying their mortgages because it's not going to be cash positive at that point. The property is going to be worth less than how much they owe on the home.
And it is the government itself that allowed it to get to that point. I mean, there is really no one else to really blame. So it's going to be sad. But moving on to Europe and Germany, there's a story we have been covering and talking about for a while now, but apparently the number just keeps growing because from Euronews, social media rife with conspiracy theories after 16 now, last time we said it was 7, candidates pass away ahead of German local elections, and the number keeps growing.
So yeah, it was 7 AFD candidates, and this is the far right party. The people in Germany do not want this party to get in because the entire EU is held together by Germany, and if Germany goes against the EU and a lot of their globalist plans, the whole EU is going to fall apart. Their idea for a digital currency, digital ID, a lot of the things they need to push forward to indenture their citizens will fall apart. That being said, 7 AFD members have died. I think it's a few more now, but on top of that, other candidates are dying as well. Are they killing other candidates just to cover up the fact that they went after the AFD? The elections are, I believe, this week coming up.
So, state police looking into the initial 4 passings, which were announced on September 1st, told the German press agency there was no evidence of any third-party involvement. The election supervisor in the western German state of North Rhine-Westphalia has told the media that authority is aware of 16 candidates passing in the run-up to this month's local elections.
And you also have to realize this. All these candidates may not be AFD candidates, but they may be sympathetic to some of their policies. So they need everybody to be completely in line, because what the EU is going to want to do over the next 6 to 12 months is a digital currency. This is an absolutely crucial point in the globalist point for control, that they have all the votes that they need. And they have a solid bunch of politicians all saying the same thing.
So elections will take place in the state on September 14, and voters will choose district, municipal, and city councils, as well as mayors in most cities and district administrators. But election officials say they are not concerned by the number of passings and don't consider it significantly high.
How was that not high? That sounds like
I mean,
Mexico
if we were
to
in,
me.
if we were in Mexico, that's not high, but
Yeah.
that speculation has been rife on social media due to the rising number of passings among candidates representing the far-right Alternative for Germany AFD party. At the beginning of September, 4 candidates for the AFD were reported passed.
It was 4, it was 6,
And just
then
days
it was
later-
7, and now it's 16. That's suspicious in any country, including Mexico.
The AFD co-chair Alice Weidel said shared the news in a post on social media X, saying 4 AFD candidates have passed. The initial 4 passings were among candidates representing the towns of Bad Lispringe,
And it's
Bloomberg,
interesting that they keep saying 4, 4, 4. No, it's not 4. It's 7 AFD candidates now a week before the election. They keep talking about 4 because that was the initial 4 that passed away. And now we're up to 16 total. Not all of those are AFD candidates, but like I said, they may be sympathetic to some of the points of the AFD, because what the AFD is saying is what the citizens kind of want. So even if you're with another party, you're going to have to capitulate to some of these policies if you want to win an election.
And just to give the other, side of the story, no evidence of foul play. Police say state police looking into the initial 4 passings which were announced September 1st, told German press agency that there was no evidence of any third-party involvement. Only in one case was an official investigation launched, which did not uncover any evidence of foul play. The other 3 passings were determined to have passed in circumstances that were not deemed suspicious. Of the candidates whose passings were announced on September 2nd, one passed of kidney failure, while others ended their own lives.
A political serial killer we have on our hands here, but that's just a mine. Apparently, there's no foul play involved.
On September 3rd, AFD branch in Rijmsden told Politico that their candidate for Kremenhol was an 80-year-old who passed of natural causes after a long illness. Kay Gossach, AFD state vice president, said that there's no reason to view the passings as anything other than coincidence. Nevertheless, it is planned to examine the cases without immediately getting into conspiracy theory. So, okay. One of them was 80 years old. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next story here. And I didn't put him on a cover for a reason, and we'll talk about that. And this was Conor McGregor.
Yes, so from Conor McGregor, citizens of Ireland, the time for change is now. As president, I will not sign any bill in law until it goes back to the people first. If you want to see my name on the ballot for the presidency, I urge you to contact your local city councillors today and ask them to nominate me. Our councillors are the backbones of our communities. They work harder and deliver more for the people than those in the Oireachtas who continue to fail this country time and time again. If you're a councillor who feels your voice is ignored, your hands are tied.
Okay, we can kind of leave it there. We're going to let him say it here. He's got a public statement. But before we get into it, let's talk about this. I've put, when he first announced he had enough support to run for president, because they were trying to block him out first. And then he was going to run for mayor. Then they tried to block him out for that as well. Supposedly he's rallied enough support. Hopefully he has, even though he has a very turbulent past, possibly a drug and alcohol problem as well. You're going to need somebody a little bit crazy and independently wealthy to really push the government in the right direction and not bend. That being said, we've put him on the cover a few times, and before he was trying to run for politics, he would do huge numbers as a thumbnail for anybody that put him on the cover. Every time I put him on the cover now, since he's trying to run for politics, he does the lowest numbers. They're trying to throttle him, not just on YouTube, but in the news everywhere. I couldn't find a story about this guy. I had to go to X to watch his statement. They know the danger of him, even though the Irish president doesn't have a lot of power in their parliament. He is the voice of the people. He can go to social media. He can rally the people to put tremendous pressure on the other politicians in Ireland and the UK. So he is very dangerous to the establishment.
Good morning, citizens of Ireland. I'm here today outside the office of the Taoiseach an Taoiseach, where we are over 200 days into the formation of current government. In these times, this government has cost us our peace of mind, our security, our hope for the future, and the general well-being of Irish citizens nationwide has decreased dramatically, whereby we have seen the homelessness of Irish children risen to levels unprecedented, proving this government's refusal to abide by and respect our proclamation, and where all children of Ireland are to be cherished. Instead, our children abandoned. This incompetent failure of future generations has been accompanied with an intense influx of mass migration into an already severed system. Our tourism has sharply declined, while danger on our streets has risen. Ireland, as a master of martial combat, a solution-driven man, you will hear me speak on a problem but once, then it is action towards solution. I urge all our citizens to be of the same. Today, Ireland, I am outside these gates of these appointed officials, but as your head of state, you empower me to enter these buildings on your behalf. A president face to face with government officials with only one priority: to ensure that the country our founding fathers gave their life for is strictly adhered to on behalf of its citizens. Ireland, under my tenure, the will of the people will be heard. Ireland, under my tenure, we will return important articles of our Constitution prior, and thus again aligning with Padraig Pearse's proclamation in that we declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies, to be sovereign and indefeasible Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood. Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
And good on him. Ireland has nothing to lose at this point. Their politicians have sold them up the river like no other country has. I understand he has a shady background. I understand he has a drug and alcohol problem and a lot of other problems. But if he does 1/10 of what he's going to say, and he is the only one promising to do something here, you have nothing to lose, Ireland. Your politicians have sold you up the river. Give this man a shot and we'll see what kind of happens. It's not only the people he can rally to put pressure on the government, but he has deep, deep ties with Donald Trump and the American government. And the American government is looking to come into Western Europe and put massive pressure on them to get rid of these globalists that have infected the world. There are people and there are politicians in Hungary and Eastern Europe that are aligned with the Trump administration, but there is nobody in Western Europe right now. Elect Conor McGregor, and he may be that key for America to come into Western Europe and offer freedom again for their people.
I do think he's still a little bit loopy, and I don't know what good of a job he can actually do.
But you have nobody else.
But he can, yeah. It's a Trump situation.
It would be one thing if you had another option. You don't have another option unless you're going to elect more globalist politicians that are going to do the exact opposite of what the citizens want.
And at the same time, kind of like same with Canada, it is in part a making of their own people and of their own choices and of their own what they've prioritized and who they voted for the longest time, and seeing the effects now of knowing what is happening and being completely stagnant to the point that now a Conor McGregor has to go out there and start behaving decently, even though we all know he's been hit in the head many times.
Well, also he has a bad reputation and a bad history. But that being said, this could be a redemption story for him if he's able to come through and actually represent the will of the people here. Okay.
Hopefully. But speaking of Trump connections and moving back to the US, apparently Zuckerberg was caught on a hot mic saying, I wasn't ready to do our announcement. I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with to Trump, I believe.
Yeah, and this is interesting. This makes me think there's private contracting going on behind the scenes. He didn't know if he wanted to say the whole number or the public number for the public contracts. But a lot of these companies do get military contracts, CIA contracts. So,
and we also know, I mean, Zuckerberg's specific involvement with the past administration. So what would change for this one?
This is a huge investment by Zuckerberg, and he is not the only one. Donald Trump is getting massive investment from not only the tech industry, but a lot of different industries right now. And Facebook alone is going to invest more than $500 billion in America before 2028.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, at least $600 billion through 28 in the U.S. Yeah.
It's a lot.
No, it's significant.
It's a lot. Thank you, Mark. It's great to have you.
Paying attention. But he said I wasn't sure what number you wanted to do.
And
then he told Melania.
And that being said, I don't think Zuckerberg is going to be the only other one. They're going to be investing trillions of dollars, the tech sector, into the United States. And in return, I think they're going to get protection from the Trump administration specifically. They're going to go over to Europe and they're going to stop these frivolous lawsuits, bring free speech back. The EU, the UK, they're trying to put handcuffs and fine these U.S. tech firms to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, saying you have to adhere to EU law. Trump needs to go over there and set them straight, and he's already kind of signaled he's going to do that. But with this kind of huge investment, I'm sure these tech industries are going to expect Trump to back them up and to call off these EU dogs from attack.
And it also does give both the Trump administration and the U.S. tech firms a great way to say, we don't do that way. We're going to protect our industry. And at the same time, hopefully the social media companies in the States saying we are going to protect free speech because it is now in our best interest because of the partnership that there is growing with the US government.
And if he does protect them and they don't have to pay these huge frivolous fines that are absolutely nonsense, that's just more money they're going to be able to invest in the United States, which I'm sure that's what's being talked about behind closed doors, because ultimately that's what big tech needs. They need to be protected by their government and they need free speech protected.
Oh, I was going to ask you, we don't have this story, but what do you think of them changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War?
It is what it is.
It's what it used to be.
It
like
might
a long time
it might
ago.
put a lot of other countries on notice, like Venezuela right now.
And I think that's probably why they're doing it. But it's funny that now Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of War. But speaking of war, and that's why I was bringing it up, Pentagon-funded research at colleges has aided the Chinese military, a House GOP report says, and that I have been saying for the longest time as
And
well.
I was just going to say that you've been saying it for the longest time, but you
I have.
pat yourself on the back there.
Well, there has been a lot of the deportations that have happened before even I started really going in was of Chinese nationals with ties to the Chinese to the CCP or the Chinese government that had been smuggling and had been discovered even smuggling intelligence, information, research, anything back to China, and they were some of the first that were getting deported initially. And there's been a lot of articles written about it, but not a lot of people talking
And
about it.
let's not forget, Trump recently said, I think less than a week ago, he's going to allow 600,000 Chinese students into universities and colleges. Colleges are saying they're not going to be able to stay open if they don't have an influx of Chinese students. That being said, we have a problem here if that's the case, because what are they going to do to stop this?
So, over a recent 2-year period, the Pentagon funded hundreds of projects done in collaboration with universities in China and institutes linked to that nation's defense industry, including many blacklisted by the U.S. government for working with the Chinese military, a congressional investigation has found. The report, released Friday by House Republicans on the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, argues that the projects have allowed China to exploit U.S. research partnerships for military gains while the two countries are locked in a tech and arms rivalry.
And we have to remember, we just watched the Chinese parade the other day. They had 11 new high-tech weapons nobody knew that they had. Is this how they got them?
That's what I was saying when we showed them. That's what I said. Where did they get all that tech? American taxpayer dollars should be used to defend the nation, not strengthen its foremost strategic competitor, Republicans wrote in the report. Failing to safeguard American research from hostile foreign exploitation will continue to erode U.S. technological dominance and place our national defense capabilities at risk.
Yeah, you need to stop, because they've identified the problem, they identified the solution, and then they said, well, we can't act on that solution. We're going to continue to allow 600,000 Chinese students into these colleges. Now, if you didn't have this problem and you didn't have this report, it wouldn't be a problem that you're letting in all those students, but you've now identified it and you're going to continue to do more of the same.
And again, this news isn't super new news either.
No, they have to be coming up with a plan here.
So the congressional report said some officials of the Defense Department, or now Department of War, argued research should remain open as long as it is neither controlled nor classified. The report makes several recommendations to scale back U.S. research collaboration with China. It also backs new legislation proposed by the committee's chairman, Representative John Molinar. The bill would prohibit any Defense Department funding from going to projects done in collaboration with researchers affiliated with Chinese entities that the U.S. government identifies as safety risks.
Yeah, okay.
And Pam Epson, hopefully you're surviving up there in the UK, but thank you so much for your comments, says the EU is nonsense, UK is nonsense, people have had enough. And I do think more and more we will hopefully continue to see an uprising and people speaking up and realizing that speaking up is more important than whatever the government is trying to say. No, you can. Yes, you can. I mean, if enough people stand up, speak up, or just stop kind of listening to what they're saying. Yes, I'm not saying revolution or insurrection, but at least proving to the government themselves or the legislators themselves that put that into play that it doesn't work. I mean, we saw with the whole digital ID thing for the UK, children were able to go around it by just having some character from some game
You're gonna
as
need
their ID.
you're gonna need some new fresh blood in Western Europe, whether that's the AfD in Germany or whether that's the Reform Party in the UK. Even though they've been highly corrupted in recent times, they're still better than what you got Keir Starmer has an 11% approval rating right now. His housing minister just got fired or stepped down, which is crazy because that's one of the main sectors that are having most of the problems. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get an election over in the UK soon. I would expect Reform UK to be the big winner from that.
And I think a lot of people will kind of put away their worries or their concerns or their dislike for it for a while because of the circumstance and situation that they're in right now.
But I will say, this is one of the reasons, like, Conor McGregor's a real live wire and he's done a lot of stupid things, but he's going to run his mouth and the world media is going to pick up on that, and they are connected with the UK. So that's going to put a ton of pressure on the UK government. So people in Ireland, the difference Conor McGregor can make, because there's no other politician in Western Europe saying anything like Conor McGregor is saying, he can really apply pressure and be a throughway for the US government to also apply more pressure on the UK. The UK is going to need a bailout pretty soon. There's talk about the IMF having to bail them out. The United States could possibly come in with a bailout if they're willing to do certain political reforms. So that has been talked about.
I don't know if they'd go that far, but I mean, right now, the best they have is Farage. And Farage is even saying like, yes, no migrants, but yes, women and children, but only for 5 years. But so everything, even the strongest one they have right now is like a
but it's not just Farage. Other people in the Reform UK organization now have gone against the raise the flag of raising the English flag, and they're wanting to be people to be arrested, which is crazy. They should be all over that and supporting that. That seems a fundamental principle that Reform UK should be supporting. And I like Reform UK better than any other party, but man, you don't really have a good choice. It's the best of a bad bunch, I guess.
And Pam Epson says, I don't know if there was a message before this one, but Pam Epson says she was deputy prime minister as well. We have the worst government ever now. Maybe we're missing one message, but probably can pinpoint to who you say.
Oh, probably the housing minister she was talking about, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then now the rest of our stories are too spicy for YouTube, even here in Mexico. So we're going over to RUMBLE or the Green Monster. But if you're here on YouTube, before you follow us over to RUMBLE, don't forget to subscribe, please. We are trying to get to 500 subscribers here on YouTube for this channel.
Yeah.
And then some more on RUMBLE. But we are going to be speaking about Health Secretary RFK Jr. and some of the stuff he has been able to
he's been making
about the U.S. government.
He's been making major waves recently, and he's probably one of the best appointments Donald Trump has done. And when he first got in there, I was pushing him, and now he's finally following through. So good on to RFK.
And Pam Epson also says before we go, only one reform member think that was dealt with. So we'll see you over at RUMBLE so we can talk spicy stuff.
Good to see you, Pam Epson.
Yes.
And we're still at 89 on Rumble. So if you're not subscribed, please do